What if I told you that behind the golden walls of ancient Egypt's palaces, danger whispered louder than the hymns to the gods? That even the Pharaoh's most trusted servants lived in constant fear, not of war, but of a single wrong look. Tonight, I'm going to take you beyond the myths and inside the palace, not as a guest, but as one of the invisible hands who served the living God and tried to survive it. Before we descend into the marble corridors and torchlit shadows, tell me, where in the world are you listening from tonight? What time is it there? If you're settling into sleep or just love hidden histories, tap the like button, hit subscribe, and let the past gently unfold. Now, close your eyes and step softly. The Pharaoh's court hears everything. To outsiders, the Pharaoh's servants lead a life gilded in gold and soaked in divine splendor. The palace gleams like a sunlit mirage on the edge of the Nile. Walls adorned with hieroglyphs, columns wrapped in lotus and papyrus motifs, and servants moving amidst treasures no commoner will ever touch. But behind this shimmering facade lies a world of impossible demands, brutal discipline, and deadly politics. Welcome to a life where one wrong word or misstep could mean punishment worse than death. From dawn's first light, the air inside the palace is already heavy with tension. The servants are not slaves, at least not in the popular sense, but their fates are entwined tightly with the whims of their divine master. Imagine waking each day knowing that your survival depends on anticipating every silent gesture of a pharaoh revered not just as king, but as living god. One glance, a subtle frown, a missed command, and you risk exile, imprisonment, or forced labor in the scorching deserts. The Pharaoh's servants are a diverse lot. Some hold prestigious titles, chamberlains who guard the monarch's secrets, scribes whose hands write history's imperishable scrolls, priests who minister to divine rituals. Others are menials, cleaners scrubbing sandstone floors, cooks preparing lavish feasts, water bearers enduring grueling heat. Yet all are prisoners of court hierarchy, subject to the merciless scrutiny of officials whose eye rarely misses. A fault, being close to power does not mean safety. If anything, it means constant danger. Palace intrigue is a poisonous game. Rivals lurk in shadowed corridors, waiting for a slip to denounce a servant or a favorite. Alliances are fragile, loyalty is transactional, and whispers could bring ruination as swiftly as the blade of a royal executioner. The Pharaoh himself is a paradoxical figure, godlike and terrifying. His moods ripple like the Nile, serene. One moment, violent the next. Displaying loyalty is vital, yet too much zeal can breed suspicion. The court's gaze is unrelenting, privacy an illusion. Even your dreams might betray you. How many servants have vanished overnight, their disappearance marked only by an empty sandal left behind, with gold-laden ceremonies celebrated above. Servants toil in sweat below, their toil invisible yet indispensable. They prepare incense, attend to the royal bath, maintain sacred animals, and perform rituals that weave the divine will into the world. They are bound inextricably to a system that demands subservience yet offers no guarantee of protection. Still, the palace promises rewards, rare graces of favor, glimpses of power, scraps from the Pharaoh's table, even hope of promotion. But every privilege comes at a price heavier than the desert sun bearing down beyond the palace walls. As day turns to night, the palace breathes a different kind of life. Servants move through darkened halls, whispers sharpen into threats, and the flicker of torches casts dancing shadows on painted walls. Secrets passed between conspirators could be your downfall. If you think the workday was brutal, wait until you see what the night demands. By the time the stars blaze overhead, many servants collapse in cramped quarters, their bodies aching, hearts pounding, not just from exhaustion, but from fear. Moments of respite are rare and stolen, always against the clock of some urgent command. Sleep is haunted by rumors, screams, and the ever-present question, who will be next to fall from favor? If you thought serving a king in a gilded court meant comfort and safety, think again. In this palace of divine light, the shadows are deeper than you can imagine. Serving the Pharaoh was a world governed by extremes. Extremes of luxury for some, extremes of exhaustion for many. As dawn broke over the Nile, the palace's inner life stirred not with ease but with calculated precision. The sun's rise was both a blessing and a warning, a new day to serve, obey, and survive. The Pharaoh's servants were organized into precise ranks, each with defined duties but no room for error. From the lectors who read aloud royal decrees and prayers, to the cupbearers who ensured the Pharaoh's wine was never poisoned, every role was vital and fraught with peril. The elite chamberlain, trusted with the Pharaoh's private quarters, enjoyed superficial privilege, but their position was a sword of Damocles. Any perceived slip could lead to demotion, exile, or something far worse. Lower servants, like water carriers and cooks, faced brutal labor under harsh conditions, with little recognition. Early mornings meant endless preparation. Kitchens produced lavish feasts for the Pharaoh's numerous tables, not just daily sustenance, but ritual offerings to gods and ceremonies. The cooks worked near suffocating heat, handling exotic spices and layers of bread, meats and fruits requiring delicate balance. The slightest mistake could spoil an entire offering or, worse, invite the Pharaoh's wrath. Servants recall how even burnt bread wasn't just a kitchen failure, but a cosmic affront demanding punishment. The palace was a hive of ceremonial life. Priests and ritual specialists orchestrated daily offerings to gods like Ammon, Ra, and Osiris. Servants assisted with these rites, their days punctuated by the ringing of temple bells, incense smoke, and chanting hymns. They carried vessels of water, oil, and blood for sacrifice, constantly mindful that any impurity could anger the gods and provoke royal suspicion. The physical toll was relentless. Long hours, heavy burdens, and the constant sun beating down on sandstone corridors, but labor was only part of survival. The Pharaoh's court was a vortex of politics and paranoia. Trust was a luxury few could afford. The constant parade of nobles, scribes, generals, and foreign envoys meant that servants lived under siege from intrigue and spying. Informers lurked in every hallway, tasked with reporting missteps, as if their lives depended on it because they did. A misplaced word about the Pharaoh's mood, a misdelivered message, or a glance perceived as disrespect could unravel years of careful service. In an instant, personal danger lurked in unexpected places. Some servants endured physical punishment for the smallest mistakes, lashings for broken vessels, beatings for lateness, and imprisonment in dank cells beneath the palace for perceived disloyalties. The infamous House of Silence, a shadowy prison for palace offenders, was whispered about with fear. The few who survived its darkness never spoke of what cruelty awaited inside. The Pharaoh himself was inscrutable. Legend records moments when his fury could descend suddenly. A servant might be honored one day with a token of favor ornate jewelry, land rights, or a promise of promotion only to vanish in disgrace the next. Royal moods shifted unpredictably like the Nile's flooding. Historic texts recount how some servants, accused of failing or conspiring, were subjected to disappearance, dragged away by masked soldiers. Never seen again yet, ambition kept many clinging to service. Some sought favor to access wealth and power impossible outside the palace walls. The rare promotion could change lives, offering comfortable quarters, influence over decisions, and proximity to the divine ruler. However, this climb was perilous. The higher one rose, the sharper the fall. Some chronicled careers ended by court rivals, poisonous whispers or accusations of sedition. Food was both a symbol and battleground of status within palace life. The pharaoh dined on exotic delicacies, fattened geese, figs soaked in honey, and wine pressed from distant vineyards. Servants, meanwhile, ate meager rations of barley bread and salted fish in crowded quarters far from the dining hall's golden glow. Attempts to snatch leftovers were met with harsh discipline, or worse, accusations of theft. Hunger was a constant shadow, making every meal a tense and sometimes violent event. Trust was scarce in relationships between servants, too. Loyalty was currency, traded and betrayed. Friendships were fragile. Alliances shifted according to who promised protection or who whispered threats. The evidence of this social web lies hidden in temple records and letters revealing intricate patronage and sabotage. A servant caught colluding with rivals faced ruin and possibly death. One of the darkest forms of control was the constant surveillance of the pharaoh's spies. Embedded throughout the palace, their ears caught every rumor, their eyes missed nothing. These agents reported even the faintest hint of discontent or inefficiency. A servant's thoughts, gestures, and words were never truly private. Even expressions of weariness or sadness could be twisted into evidence of conspiracy. Yet, in the midst of scrutiny and servitude, moments of humanity flickered. A servant caught in a rare smile from the pharaoh or a nod of approval treasured. That recognition, some shared quiet conversations in shadowed corridors, tasting brief respite from relentless duty. These moments formed fragile threads of hope that sometimes helped servants endure. Still, danger always lurked. Whispers told stories of those who vanished overnight, of secret trials held behind closed doors, and of executions carried out in silence. Some were accused of failing the pharaoh, others of plotting with enemies. The fear was that none, not even the favored, were safe for long. As the sun dipped beyond the palace walls, a different rhythm took hold. Night duties began, guarding chambers, tending torches, assisting in secret rituals meant to protect the pharaoh's divine body. Here, pressure intensified. Failures in the night could invite curses, divine wrath, or royal fury by dawn. The palace breathed heavy with tension in these hours, every sound magnified, every shadow a threat. Those assigned as night attendants lived with dread of the night watch, a group tasked with punishing disobedient servants under the cover of darkness. Stories told of clandestine arrests, brutal interrogations, and disappearances into underground dungeons. Few who faced the night watch returned to see the morning sun, with so much at stake. Servants became masters of discretion and silence. Gossip and secrets were currency, but too much meant peril. Sometimes, a whispered word saved a life. Other times, it destroyed futures. The pulse of palace intrigue ran through every corridor. Betrayal and favor danced as closely as sunlight and shadow. And yet, for all the dangers, the Pharaoh's servants were crucial to maintaining the ancient order. They were the hands that steadied the divine throne, that performed rites sustaining Egypt's cosmic balance. Every task was an act of devotion, but one that came at terrible personal cost. Tonight, the night after your introduction to this hidden world, the palace is preparing for an enormous festival in honor of the god Ra. Firelight flickers in the vast halls. Incense smoke weaves through ornate columns, and restless servants ready the tables and priests for ceremonies that will last until dawn. The Pharaoh's favor hangs heavier than ever, and so does the silent threat of falling from grace. What will happen when demands clash, tempers flare, and hidden plots come to light under ancient stars? Life inside the Pharaoh's palace was a fierce contradiction of splendor and hardship. Those who served the king of Egypt lived under an unyielding microscope, where magnificence was the mask worn over exhaustion, fear, and ceaseless competition. To be close to the divine ruler was a coveted privilege, but one that came with invisible shackles and a price few outsiders imagined. Palace servants belonged to a strict hierarchy that extended beyond simple job functions. Their positions were rigidly defined by birth, skill, and often the favor of powerful patrons. The great servants, like the trusted chamberlains or royal scribes, held symbolic power and influence, but they lived with the sword of suspicion dangling overhead. A misplaced glance, jewelry too ostentatious, or too much ease in the Pharaoh's presence could turn praise into peril. The lower ranks, including cleaners, stable hands, and kitchen laborers, faced brutal daily realities. Dawn to dusk there. Days were spent beneath the glare of the sun or in chambers stifling with incense smoke, toiling to maintain the court's illusions of perfection. Walls iced with hieroglyphs and painted gods hid floors slick with water and spilled ale, corridors whispering secrets and betrayals. The palace itself was a trap. Servants had their quarters crammed into tight cells, often shared and poorly ventilated. Privacy did not exist, and rest was measured in stolen minutes between endless rounds of obedience. Diseases readily spread in these crowded conditions, and medical care was rudimentary, reserved mostly for nobles or favored officials. Yet, being a servant was far more than physical toil. It was psychological warfare. Constant vigilance was mandatory. The Pharaoh's unpredictable moods meant no one was ever truly secure. One day, a servant might receive praise or a rare gift. The next, punishment without explanation. Tales abound of servants mysteriously lost to the deserts or consigned to backbreaking labor in quarries when they fell out of favor. Serving the Pharaoh was navigating a complex dance of loyalty, ambition, and secret alliances. Informers, as whisperers, were embedded everywhere. They watched, listened, and carefully reported the smallest missteps. A servant's words in the marketplace, a fleeting smile at a courtier, even the pattern of their footsteps could be twisted into evidence of disloyalty. Those accused faced not just demotion, but often brutal torture or death. The political intrigue within the palace was relentless. Royal succession was a delicate web of legitimacy, and servants were pawns in the greater game of power. Some wielded influence as gatekeepers to audiences or secret keepers of divine mandates. Others were disposable, useful only so long as they stayed silent and efficient. The tension between these extremes created a toxic environment where paranoia was survival. Ironically, the duties closest to the pharaoh, like those attending his private chambers, baths, or sacred regalia, were the most dangerous. These servants walked the narrowest path between favor and doom. They witnessed sacred rituals, heard whispered prayers, and were trusted with the Pharaoh's intimate concerns. Yet their eyes and loyalty were always under scrutiny. The Pharaoh himself was both distant god and relentless overseer. His divine status imposed an unbearable weight on those who served him. No errors were allowed, no delays excused. His presence was felt everywhere, in the ritual order of the day, the strict dress codes, the language permitted, and in the fear that any misstep could be fatal. Food was a constant battlefield. The royal kitchens produced unimaginable feasts. But for servants, hunger was a daily threat. Rations for lower ranks consisted of stale bread, salted fish, and occasionally a handful of onions or dates. The disparity between the Pharaoh's opulence and the servant's subsistence was staggering, breeding resentment and secret theft that, when discovered, led to savage punishment. Despite this, some servants found fleeting moments of camaraderie and even subtle resistance. Whispered jokes in dim corridors, shared scraps behind closed doors, and furtive notes passed like treasure. These small human connections were acts of survival, precious amid the harshness. Tonight, the palace prepares for a grand festival honoring Amun-Ra, the sun god. Torches blaze in the courtyards, musicians tune their instruments, and priests chant praises. Servants scramble to produce offerings, clean the sacred spaces, and dress statues in fresh linens. The air is electric with the undercurrent of dread. Every servant knows that festivals bring heightened scrutiny. The Pharaoh's desires shift like desert sand, and anything less than perfection is met with swift judgment. Years of standing watch have taught them that those who falter will vanish, sometimes silently, sometimes amid spectacle. Rumors circulate now of a royal chamberlain who displeased the Pharaoh at last year's feast and was buried alive in a collapsed pyramid tunnel. The palace at night is a shadowed labyrinth. Servants bound to night watches tread silently through corridors where painted gods seem to stare with judgment. Spies patrol, picks locked tight in hands, scanning for whispered conspiracies. The atmosphere is taut with fear and expectancy. The festival's grandest ritual, the lighting of the holy fires, falls to a small team of servants. They carry torches of cedar and frankincense oil, their flames to be placed in the temple's eternal lamps. The weight of this honor is immense, but so is the danger. A slip, a mistake in timing or placement, could bring divine wrath and royal fury alike. As torches lift and flames catch, a shadow detaches silently from a nearby column. A murmur rises among servants. The shadow moves like a wind, vanishing before it can be seen clearly. Whispers surge like a tide, a spy, a curse, a ghost of a forgotten prisoner. The night holds its breath in the royal harem, where the Pharaoh's favored women live behind golden screens. Tension is no less fierce. The wives and concubines are themselves players in the court's deadly game. Their servants, often selected from the same ranks, serve as intermediaries, confidants, or informants. Rumors of rivalries, poisonings, and secret liaisons circulate. Behind delicate veils, a young maidservant, newly brought into the harem, trembles as she crosses its threshold. She is warned by elder hands. Loyalty is sold, trust is treacherous, and silence is survival. Even the faintest hint of sympathy towards a fallen rival could spell exile or worse. Outside the palace, the Nile's calm is a stark contrast to the palace's fever pitch. The river is life and death trusted ally and merciless foe. Servants who fail within the walls may be sent to toil on its banks, hauling stone or rowing barges for years. Some whisper that the river itself has claimed those lost to court intrigues. As midnight approaches, the palace seems to close its breath. Those who brave the night's duties move with care, eyes sharp, hearts pounding. The festival's peak remains hours away, but unseen forces are already at work, alliances forged in shadows. Secrets traded in coded whispers, plots simmering in guarded chambers. You can almost hear the coming storm beneath the glittering surface. Who will rise with favor, and who will fall through the cracks tonight? The palace day is far from over when the sun dips below the horizon, casting long, shifting shadows across the golden walls and sandstone columns. It is after dark that the true trials of the Pharaoh's servants begin, when the flicker of torches illuminates secret plots, whispered malice, and the delicate games of survival. Here, in the quiet corridors and sealed chambers, the servant's role twists ever tighter between privilege and peril. Loyalty is the currency of power in these shadowed hours. But even loyalty can be weaponized or tested by those who cling to influence. Servants overhear conversations not meant for their ears, see exchanges of glances loaded with meaning, and become unwilling players in the cosmic drama unfolding behind curtained doors. The Pharaoh's favor is fickle, and the closer you are to the throne, the sharper the blade of betrayal can feel. Trust rarely thrives here. The palace employs a network of informants, trusted servants turned spies who report the slightest deviation from expected behavior. Some are paid handsomely, others coerced by fear. No one can be sure who listens. No one can speak freely. Missteps, accidents, or even misunderstandings can trigger swift consequences. History records many a favorite's silent fall, disappearing overnight into dark prisons or desert labor camps. Consider the Chamberlain, once among the Pharaoh's most trusted aides. He knew the king's moods, anticipated his desires, and guarded his secrets. Yet a careless word whispered in confidence to a fellow servant or misheard by an ambitious rival sealed his fate. Within days he vanished without a trace, replaced by a younger, more submissive official who cringed before the Pharaoh's gaze. Others whispered that the Chamberlain's disappearance was punishment for meddling in a confidential ritual or failing to safeguard the king's sacred regalia. Physical danger lurked as well. Stories passed down through temple scribes recount servants punished not just with exile, but gruesome deaths for touching what was forbidden or simply existing in the wrong place at the wrong time. Royal decrees were absolute. Servants who inadvertently insulted the Pharaoh's divine image, whether by neglect or defiance, risked beatings, mutilation, or even being thrown to beasts. The infamous House of Silence, a subterranean prison beneath the palace, was a place few returned from, hidden in the twisting catacombs. It was said to be a chamber of horrors where voices echoed in eternal silence, and the condemned served out their punishments in darkness and despair. How many servants sentenced here were mere victims of court intrigue is lost to history, but the fear of such a fate haunted every corridor step. This night, the palace is alight with preparations for a grand festival in honor of Amun-Ra, the great sun god. Music and incense fill the marble halls. Nobles draped in finery mingle in anticipation, and priests chant elaborate hymns. Yet beneath the glitter, the servants move with a caution born of knowing. The festival will be a crucible for power, a moment when old enemies might strike, desires will be tested, And the Pharaoh's Favarand, wrath lit anew like the festival. Fires dot in the kitchens, cooks toil feverishly, aware that a single burnt loaf or missing spice could turn the entire event into catastrophe. Their sweat mingles with the heat of fire pits as exotic meats are halved, honey-glazed fruits arranged, and wine decanted from ornate vessels. The cooks speak little. Their eyes dart nervously as a royal inspector moves between tables, scrutinizing every dish. A disappointed glance from Pharaoh's attending vizier could spell disaster. But a smiler, rare blessing could carry a servant to new heights. Meanwhile, in the royal stables, grooms tend to the Pharaoh's favored horses, animals, revered as extensions of the king's glory. These beasts were adorned with jeweled harnesses and treated with rituals as sacred as those for their master. But wait too long in washing or fail to notice a limp, and the punishment was swift and merciless. A groom caught neglecting his charge might find himself stripped of his position, or worse, dispatched to a life of grueling labor far from the palace. Elsewhere in the palace, the sacred rituals unfold in silence. Priests perform rites, invoking divine blessings, their chants weaving magic into the night air. Servants bring offerings, light torches, and maintain order in shadowed chambers where the Pharaoh's presence is felt beyond the corporeal of God. Walking among mortals whose favor bestowed life and whose anger foretold death. Among the servants, alliances form and dissolve with a whisper. One might find a protector in a powerful eunuch, gaining favor and safety. Another might trust a fellow scribe or chambermaid, who can offer crucial information, but betrayal always lurks close by. Stories tell of servants who pretended loyalty, only to betray their allies for a scrap of power or an elusive token of the king's glance. Secrets passed from hand to hand like currency who displeased the Pharaoh, who was suspected of plots, who had fallen into disgrace. These rumors were a lifeline and a death sentence. A solitary night whispered insult or joke at the wrong ears might escalate into accusations of conspiracy or treason. And the Pharaoh's justice, when summoned, was far beyond mercy. As the grand solstice approaches its climax, a sudden riot breaks out in a nearby district. The reasons are lost to factional whispers, but the city guard moves quickly, quelling unrest. Inside the palace, these events ripple through conversations, heightening paranoia. The Pharaoh, ever watchful of unrest beyond his walls, demands reports and scapegoats. Servants in the city's lower courts and gates feel the consequences, with arrests and punishments escalating. Back in the royal court, a mysterious new attendant arrives, cloaked in silken robes darker than midnight. His origins unknown, he quickly charms nobles and servants alike. Whispers suggest he carries favor beyond the palace, perhaps the blessing of a powerful foreign envoy, or secret ties to the high priesthood. But others watch him with suspicion, wondering if he is a spy, a poisoner, or a rival agent seeking to upset the fragile order. Soon after his arrival, a trusted servant disappears without explanation. A whispered rumor claims the newcomer had a hand in it, either directly or through manipulation. The palace is abuzz with fear and speculation. Few dare speak openly, yet many watch their backs. Who will be next? And what will be the price of this unknown figure's favor? As the festival fires blaze higher, the palace's pulse quickens. Servants clutch their secrets close, allies sharpen their wits, and the Pharaoh's gaze weighs over all. Tonight, power will be won and lost not in the public eye, but in shadowed corners where loyalty mingles with fear and a single mistake could be fatal. If you thought palace life was merely luxurious, wait till you uncover what survives behind. Those gilded walls, when darkness falls, friendships are tested, betrayals bloom, and every shadow hides a story waiting to erupt. Behind the grandeur and the divine favor bestowed upon the Pharaoh, the palace operated like a tightly woven web of intrigue, where every thread could unravel the fate of the servants ensnared within. The higher one ascended in the ranks, the more complex and dangerous the power plays became. Ambition and trust rarely traveled the same path, and alliances shifted like desert sands. At the heart of the palace, trusted servants, chamberlains, scribes, and courtiers juggled delicate balances between serving the Pharaoh's will and safeguarding their own lives. One faltered word in a whispered conversation, one secret overheard, could topple years of careful navigation, turning respect into suspicion and favor into fatal punishment. Take the story of Neferemput, the royal cupbearer, whose rise was swift but precarious. Known for his wit and discretion, Neferemput was instrumental in coordinating court ceremonies and protecting the pharaoh from poison. Yet his success made him a target. Rivals accused him of plotting to manipulate succession, spreading rumors that reached the ears of the pharaoh's most feared overseer. A day after the festival, Neferemput vanished, whisked away without trial or explanation. His family begged for answers in vain. Rumors swirled of secret tunnels and midnight trials, whispers of betrayal and bloodshed shrouded in shadows. This fear of exposure bred paranoia among servants. Even those loyal to one another kept secrets locked behind forced smiles. Better to smile with your enemies than cry with the innocent, was the bitter advice passed down by seasoned courtiers. Trust was currency, but currency that could be quickly devalued or outright stolen by a jealous rival. Among the lesser servants, competition was no less ruthless. The kitchen staff jockeyed for small scraps of favor. The stable hands fought over horse assignments. Even the water bearers whispered about who might next fall asleep on the job and earn a whipping. In this world, mistakes were magnified under the pharaoh's gaze, and sympathy was a luxury rarely granted. Physical punishment was a grim reality for mistakes or perceived slights. The watchful eyes of the overseers ensured swift discipline. Stories persist of servants scourged within earshot of the royal chamber, their cries mingling with the prayers of priests. The prison cells beneath the palace were cold and unforgiving, drowning voices in chains and silence. Those sentenced to the quarries or distant labor camps faced uncertain futures, often never returning. But the palace was not only a place of fear, it was also a theater of power that extended beyond Egypt's borders. Foreign envoys arrived with gifts, secrets, and ambitions, and servants became conduits for espionage. Some were pawns, others willing traders in information, bartering whispers for protection or advancement. One night, during the festival dedicated to Hathor, a foreign official's trusted interpreter was found dead in the corridor, a carved amulet of ancient magic clenched in his fist. Theories abounded, from assassination to curse, but the palace bureaucracy hushed the matter swiftly, erasing the man's name from records as though he had never existed. Yet servants recalled how the pharaoh's gaze darkened that night, the halls thick with silence and suspicion. This blend of superstition and politics permeated daily life. Symbols carried secret messages. The servants learned to read signs in the pharaoh's behavior, what a twitch of an eyebrow meant, when a slight nod was a warning, and how silence could speak louder than a shout. A simple shift of a sandal or the way incense smoke curled might herald favor or foreshadow doom. The palace's very architecture seemed complicit in its mysteries. Secret passages, false doors, and shadowy corners offered refuge to spies, assassins, or desperate servants seeking reprieve. Yet navigating this labyrinth required connections. An ill-timed turn, a wrong hand grasped, could mean entrapment or death. Religious belief both reinforced and complicated this atmosphere. The Pharaoh was seen as the living embodiment of Horus and son of Ra. To question his will was blasphemy. Servants internalized this fear. To err was to endanger not just themselves but the cosmic order. Ritual purity was paramount. Failure to maintain it incurred divine wrath, manifesting as societal punishment. Daily life was regimented by rites, blending spirituality and obedience. Servants followed strict routines of washing, dressing, offerings, and chants. The slightest deviation was a mark of disloyalty. Some servants became experts in ritual, hoping to use religious knowledge as shields. Others saw it as chains tightening around their lives. Amid these oppressive realities, human resilience flickered. Alliances were forged in secret, bonds of friendship shared in stolen moments, away from watchful eyes. Some servants learned to mask their fears with humor or silent contemplation, finding strength in small acts of rebellion. A softly sung hymn, a whispered prayer for mercy, a valiant smile toward despair. But just as the festival's crescendo approached, an unexpected event shattered the delicate equilibrium. A servant of low rank was found with a forbidden object to scroll, with hieroglyphs that spoke of shadowy magic, banned by the high priests. The accusation rippled swiftly through the court, igniting a frenzy of suspicion as officials scrambled to root out the conspirators behind this act. Whispers claimed this servant was part of a secret cabal intent on overthrowing the pharaoh or poisoning the sacred royal line. Others suggested foreign spies planting unrest. Yet facts were scarce, shrouded in fear and official silence. The accused was seized in the dead of night, dragged away without chance to plead. Their fate sealed in dark chambers. The palace tightened its grip. Servants found themselves subject to increased surveillance. Even the trusted feared betrayal. Torches flared longer, guards doubled their rounds, and the pharaoh's own temper grew tempestuous. The shadows deepened, secrets multiplied, and the thin veneer of favor cracked. Who could be trusted? What price would be paid for survival? As dawn's fragile light creeps into the palace windows, the glittering halls mask the simmering dangers that pulse beneath the surface. Behind every golden door hides a story of whispered treason, carefully spun rumors, and the fragile threads of loyalty stretched perilously thin. For the pharaoh's servants, dangers multiply with every rising sun, and ambition may as well be a poison floating invisibly in the air. The palace was not merely a home for the divine. It was a battlefield where information was currency and secrets were weapons. Servants who mastered the art of discretion flourished. Those who faltered became targets. Trust was a rare luxury, and alliances formed as quickly as they shattered, often at the cost of careers or lives. Some servants found patronage in powerful nobles or priests, gaining protection that allowed a precarious degree of security. Yet, this protection was a double-edged sword, binding them to their patrons' fortunes and enemies. To fall out of favor with one meant courting disaster from the other. Court records are littered with pleas and complaints from servants abandoned by once protective masters. left vulnerable to accusations of conspiracy or incompetence. One of the most dangerous places was the Pharaoh's council chambers, meetings that appeared ceremonial, often swirled with hidden meanings. Servants assigned to attend carried messages encrypted with threats or hidden clues. A scribal error could be read as insubordination. A misplaced item, an amulet, a scroll, or a cup could trigger an accusation of theft or sabotage. Fear spread faster than the desert winds. Physical danger was also ever present. Punishments were swift, brutal, and absolute. Corporal punishment was a common tool: floggings, mutilations, forced labor under a blazing sun. Those suspected of treason or offering the slightest resistance were sometimes executed outright, their disappearances explained away as divine. Justice or punishment for disloyalty. The infamous palace whip was a symbol of this harsh justice. Made of braided leather and metal, it fell with terrifying precision. Servants spoke in hushed tones about those who had earned a lash for spilling sacred oils or speaking out of turn. Such punishments were rarely private. Pain and humiliation were weapons aimed not just at the individual, but at all who witnessed. Death was an ever-looming shadow. Some servants vanished without a trace, rumored to have been sent to work in desert mines, drowned while trying to escape, or quietly exiled to distant tomb teams. These fate-laden transports were as much a death sentence as execution. Amidst this peril, ambition was a fire that both warmed and consumed. A favored servant might receive rare honors: a seat at the Pharaoh's table, a parcel of land, or a gilded token signaling trust. But to rise required navigating rivalries fraught with danger. Spies abounded. Whispers morphed into accusations. Sudden policy shifts could leave years of loyalty worthless overnight. Power struggles often reached a violent crescendo during religious festivals. These sacred ceremonies, designed to display the Pharaoh's divine favor, doubled as arenas for political contest. Servants playing a trusted role, carrying sacred vessels, leading processions, or managing ritual purity, walked a razor's edge. One misstep risked catastrophic offense, both to the divine and to mortal patrons. Consider the role of the high priest's secretary, an ambivalent figure wielding considerable influence but also subject to intense scrutiny. Entrusted with sacred texts and confidential correspondence, the secretary could shape narratives impacting the throne. A note, misplaced or altered, could spell doom. A false accusation, a deadly tool. Historical papyri reveal how the secretary's favor rose and fell with lethal speed. Just as dangerous were the palace eunuchs, formerly castrated servants, who occupied unique positions of power and vulnerability. Though they were sometimes the Pharaoh's closest confidants, their unusual status sparked envy and distrust. Eunuchs oversaw harems, managed palace affairs, and controlled access to the ruler. Yet they were frequently scapegoated in court intrigues, their physical difference making them easy targets when paranoia flared. The harem itself was a microcosm of palace politics, where women's influence, patronage, jealousy, and survival instincts intertwined. Servants working in these quarters had front-row seats to intimate rivalries, power plays, and clandestine communications. A whisper from the chambermaid or handmaid could elevate or ruin a woman and, through her, shift the balance of power in the palace. Rumors of poisonings and assassinations permeated the palace's shadowed corners. The pharaoh and high officials often employed specialists to craft gifts that ensured loyalty or eliminated threats. Servants suspected of conspiracy found their food or drink spiked with extracts from hemlock, nightshade, or white briny. Some fell ill and never revived, their deaths attributed to fate or divine will. The constant threat of sudden death or disgrace fostered psychological torment among the servants. Letters from scribes and minor officials reveal expressions of anxiety, hopes for mercy, and desperate pleas for patronage. Some resigned themselves to fatalism. Others plotted in silence, balancing hope with fear. Yet not all was grim. Some servants carved out niches of relative power by mastering court protocols, cultivating alliances, and displaying supple loyalties. The Pharaoh's servants were not mere pawns. They were shrewd political actors navigating a labyrinth of peril, with remarkable skill and courage. As the festival of Opet draws near, the palace pulses with anticipation and dread. This public celebration honors divine union and royal power, but for servants, it is a test of endurance, prudence, and loyalty. Mistakes at Opet could lead to immediate dismissal or worse. Ancient texts recall how servants fell from grace during the festival, silenced, imprisoned, or vanishing between the temple pillars. Tonight, a trusted chamberlain is summoned mysteriously to the Pharaoh's private audience chamber. Courtiers whisper of a secret charge and accusation whispered by a rival too powerful to ignore. The chamberlain departs his post with an air of grave resolve, aware that the line between survival and oblivion has grown impossibly thin. Outside the hallways, servants exchange cautious glances, rumors swirling like desert dust storms. Eyes dart, tongues wag, and suspicions sharpen. Who whispered betrayal? Who will step forward to claim the vacant post if the chamberlain falls? The palace breathes tension, anticipation thick in the air like incense smoke. The night deepens, and with it, the stakes rise higher. A single misstep in this hive of power could unravel everything. The Pharaoh's servants live with the knowledge that any moment might be their last or their greatest. The palace breathes a heavy, watchful silence in the early hours before dawn. The grand halls and golden statues gleam under the flicker of torchlight, but the servants' whispers echo with something darker, a growing rumble of distrust, shifting alliances, and unseen dangers tightening around those who dared to serve one of history's most feared rulers. For the Pharaoh's servants, living under such exalted yet ruthless scrutiny meant mastering an impossible balancing act. On one side lay the promise of immense privilege, gilded robes, coveted rooms, scraps of the king's favor, and on the other, the ever-present threat of catastrophic downfall. One misstep, one whispered rumor, and a trusted servant could be cast into disgrace, exile, or worse. Nefertiti, the vanished royal cupbearer, acted as a cautionary tale, retold in hushed tones. His disappearance had rattled those closest to the pharaoh, reminding all that proximity to power bore its own deadly price. But less talked about was the rise of a mysterious new player, one whose silent steps and shadowed smile stirred rumors and unrest across the court, known to the select few as Mose. This enigmatic servant arrived amid the festival pomp, cloaked in unknown origins. His speech was measured, his gestures deliberate. He moved like a ripple in calm water, barely noticed until the waves disturbed the surface. Whispers abounded. A foreign agent, a priest's secret son, or a poisoned gift from a rival land. Those closest to Komos found themselves drawn into a web of secrets tighter than the palace gates themselves. Within the labyrinthine corridors, alliances began to splinter. Servants who once shared confidences glared across the kitchens or market squares with mistrust. Old friendships frayed as new loyalties shifted toward Komos or his rivals. The chamberlain, once steady and revered, now felt the weight of suspicion. Like chains, whispers between harem attendants and scribes hinted at hidden agendas, bribes exchanged under breath, and murders foretold in silent omens. In the chamber of the pharaoh's personal attendants, tensions simmered dangerously. The Pharaoh himself, a stoic figure, crowned by divinity, seemed to sense the under. His rare smiles were colder, his eyes sharper than ever. The servants who dared approach spoke of silent investigations, days without orders, nights spent under harsh torches, interrogating answers from trembling lips. Among the palace's shadows, suspected informants moved with insidious grace. Cloaked in loyalty, they whispered to the high priest and council, surveilling every smile, every glance. Their reports carved fates in stone, promotions earned or lost, rooms upgraded to cold, dungeons, lives stolen in the dark. Among servants, the name Kamose was linked to many such changes, but deliberately without proof, allowing fear to grow like weeds among fragile hearts. Yet, not all servants folded beneath the weight of suspicion and threat. A few dared to resist invisibility. They cultivated networks of secret communication, messages hidden in the folds of robes, coded signs carved into wood, whispered warnings passed below the din of sacred hymns. These quiet rebels understood the peril as well as the privilege. To serve was to walk the knife's edge between favor and oblivion. One such figure was Mary, a servant charged with maintaining the pharaoh's sacred seal. Known for her steady hands and quick wit, she had become an indispensable presence. To some, she was a trusted ally. To others, a threat. Rumors swirled that Mary possessed knowledge that could topple kings or elevate pawns. She smiled, but her eyes never betrayed the storms within. One chilling evening, as the festival air thickened with incense and tension, Mary intercepted a forbidden message, a cryptic warning sewn into a priest's cassock, hinting at a planned betrayal during the high ceremony of the sun's zenith. The message's author was masked by coded language and careful phrasing, but the intent was clear: a plot to seize power by poisoning the pharaoh's trusted circle. Mary's heart pounded as she relayed the warning to a trusted eunuch. An unusual act of defiance, deeply risky. Word moved faster than flame through the corridors. Servants exchanged nervous glances. Allies quietly drew weapons hidden beneath richly embroidered robes. The palace prepared for a night where trust was a weapon and survival was the only currency. The ceremony arrived like a suppressed storm. The pharaoh sat crowned in gold, his gaze piercing through silk curtains and polished marble. Servants performed rituals honed over generations. Water poured, incense lit, prayers hummed, each a delicate thread keeping cosmic order intact. But beneath the ceremony's seamless surface crackled the uncertain light of imminent treachery. At the height of the festival, just as the pharaoh lifted his chalice towards the sun, movement rippled among the attendants. A tremor of fear passed through Mary's veins as she spotted the shadowy figure, servant new and unknown near the royal table. Time slowed, the key to the pharaoh's survival and the trustworthiness of his loyal servants hung on the razor edge of a whispered breath. But before the figure could act, a sudden cry shattered the moment. A servant outside collapsed, clutching his throat, eyes wild in terror. Chaos erupted. The festival's harmonious order splintered into panic and suspicion. The pharaoh's favor, once a solid pillar, now seemed as fragile as a shattered lotus blossom. The servants scrambled. Was this an assassination attempt? Poison. The palace guards surged forward. The priest's chants grew frantic, and the shadowed figure slipped away unseen. In the aftermath, trust dissolved further. The guards searched, suspects were questioned, whispers turned to accusations. Mary, clutching the sealed message and racing against the clock, realized the palace was a powder keg ready to explode. The thin line between loyal servant and traitor had blurred. Every footstep echoed with hidden truths. The festival would be remembered, not just for divine glory, but as the moment when the servant's precarious balance tipped into open peril. As dawn's first light painted sandstone walls with trembling gold, the palace lay stunned in uneasy silence. The Pharaoh, God among men, remained untouched, but the realm of his servants was fractured. Who betrayed whom? Who was the shadow that moved too fast? And how long before the next blow fell? In this palace where loyalty was currency and shadows held knives sharper than any blade, survival depended on secrets, and some secrets were worth killing for. The palace's walls hold their breath, and so do we, as dawn's pale fingers retreat, and the sun claims the sky. The palace returns to its ruthless rhythm, where secrets hide in the shadows and the stakes of survival grow ever higher. In the heart of this labyrinthine world, Pharaoh's servants navigate not just the demands of labor but the perilous intricacies of loyalty, deception, and whispered conspiracies that can unravel a lifetime of service in a single breath. The palace corridors are veins of peril, no less dangerous for their ornate beauty. Every step, every glance, every gesture can carry meaning. An embroidered cuff out of place, an overheard sentence, a favored smile withdrawn or can spark murmurs that grow into accusations. Servants learn quickly that silence can be both shield and prison. Trust is a fragile luxury, bought and guarded with care. Even among supposed allies, suspicion lurks. Whispered alliances fracture, loyalties shift, and the masks of friendship crack to reveal hidden daggers beneath. A confidant today could become tomorrow's accuser. Many learned to speak in riddles, to veil meaning in shadows, to communicate with subtle nods and coded gestures, lest their words be used against them. Take the case of the royal stable slave. Known for his skill with horses and discreet nature, he was twice spared punishment after incidents spun wildly out of control. First, a missing royal saddle prompted rumors of theft. Then, a whispered accusation of overhearing sensitive counsel chatter. Each time, Komos navigated the storm with careful placations, favors offered quietly, and an uncanny ability to disappear into the background. But behind the scenes, he managed more than just horses. His vast network of contacts made him a key player in the palace's invisible webs of information. Yet with power came ever-present danger. Step wrong, and Komos risked a fall worse than any slave's chain. The palace also swirled with magical fears. The belief that treachery could be masked by curses or sorcery permeated both nobles and servants. A sudden illness in the pharaoh's retinue might ignite paranoid accusations of poison or enchantment. Servants suspected of curses risked brutal interrogations and exile to desolate labor camps, or worse. One night, a palace servant named Sesha invoked the terrifying consequences of myth when she was accused of casting spells after a string of unfortunate events. The accused, a young woman from the kitchens, was dragged before the temple priests. Evidence was thin, composed mostly of whispered rumors and her defiant silence, but power protected the accusers. Sesha's fate was sealed by fear rather than proof, a painful reminder that in this world, suspicion alone could destroy lives. Magic and religion were deeply entangled within the palace. creating a complex system of beliefs and practices. Sacred rituals promised protection and favor, yet superstition bred paranoia. Priests wielded both spiritual and temporal authority, sanctifying the pharaoh's reign while policing the moral conduct of servants. Temple slaves performed endless ceremonies, pouring libations, lighting incense, guarding holy relics, creating an atmosphere where divine will was invoked to justify earthly power and control. Yet, it was not just spiritual power that shaped court life. Family lineage and political machinations governed nearly every interaction. The pharaoh's court was not a simple hierarchy but a tangle of competing houses, each vying for influence through marital ties, patronage, and subtle sabotage. Servants often became proxies or pawns, manipulated by nobles who ensured their own survival by directing favors and enmities from the shadows. Rumors of hidden conspiracies threading through the palace would often spread like wildfire. In one whispered tale, a secret alliance between a high-ranking vizier and a foreign emissary was said to have nearly toppled the monarchy. Servants who overheard these plots lived in constant terror that their knowledge would mark them for elimination or forced exile. Everyday life was a performance, where servants layered meaning beneath their tasks. A smile to the pharaoh's representative was not always gratitude, could be a plea or a veiled warning. The placement of a tray, the sequence of oil anointing, the tone of a whispered reply, every detail was coded, and missing the mark could invite disaster. Amidst the tension, the palace offered moments of unexpected humanity. Small acts of kindness, sharing stale bread, a brief smile, a whispered prayer became lifelines within the harsh environment. Some servants found allies not just in their fellows, but in the lower nobility, eunuchs, or temple priests, forging fragile communities built on shared peril and mutual dependence. The festive season, however, brought unique pressures. Ceremonies to honor the gods, the pharaoh's divine status, or military victories meant intricate rituals where every participant was scrutinized. Faltering could mean divine displeasure or political ruin. Servants had to manage grand feasts, sacred processions, and ritual prayers, all while walking the razor's edge of survival. For many, this meant long nights under the ever-watchful eyes of palace guards and priests. Surveillance was constant, extending even into rest chambers and intimate quarters. Servants slept lightly, aware that a shadowed figure moving too slowly or a whispered word could lead to a sudden summons, perhaps to punishment, perhaps to favor, but always to uncertainty. One particularly tense evening, a significant ritual went awry. The carrying of the pharaoh's sacred emblem faltered. A misstep by a junior attendant caused the banner to brush the ground. The clash of silence and gasps was broken only by the pharaoh's icy glare. The incident spiraled into frantic investigations, with servants forced to plead their innocence while fearing the worst. Rumors circulated that the mistake was either a deliberate act of sabotage or a divine omen of change. The atmosphere thickened with tension, whispers escalating into threats. Even palace medicine was intertwined with suspicion and politics. Physicians, often also astrologers or priests, wielded considerable influence by claiming insight into the mysterious workings of the body and fate. Their treatments mingled herbal remedies with prayers, and their opinions could elevate or doom a servant suffering from illness or injury. A palace healer named Hapu was respected for his knowledge, but feared for his unpredictable temper and rumored connections to secret tantra rites. When a favored chambermaiden fell mysteriously ill, Hapu's advice to invoke protective spirits conflicted with orthodox rituals. stirring controversy. Some whispered that his strange methods challenged the established order, risking accusations of sorcery. Amidst all this, the strain of constant fear and tight control frayed nerves and bodies. Burnout, illness, and despair were common among the lower ranks. Some sought escape through dreams, substance, or secret liaisons. Others succumbed quietly, disappearing into the labor camps or the desert fringes, where many nameless lives ended in silence, crossing paths with the palace's more clandestine underbelly. You learn of hidden tunnels, known only to a few secret routes for messages, escapes, or illicit rendezvous. These shadowed passages connect forbidden quarters, the harem, the priest's chambers, and often the quarters of the favored servants who dared the risks of influence beyond their station. One such servant, named Matt, used these hidden corridors to convey information between noble factions, always walking the delicate line between loyalty and betrayal. Her lives balanced on whispered commands and stolen moments, each mission sealed with the knowledge that discovery meant exile or death. Yet she kept walking, driven by motives buried deep within the complexities of palace power. As the festival fires gutter low and the palace slowly drifts toward uneasy sleep, the silence is shattered by frantic footsteps and stifled cries. Servant has been discovered in the act of stealing sacred oils intended for temple rites, a crime considered not just theft but sacrilege. The punishment is swift and merciless. The accused dragged before the Pharaoh himself for judgment. The court gathers in breathless anticipation. The accused fate is not merely a matter of justice, but a message to all who serve. Loyalty is demanded without fail, and betrayal is unforgivable. The servants huddle behind columns, eyes wide, hearts pounding, not just for the condemned, but for the precariousness of their own lives. In this crucible of fear and ambition, you glimpse the unbearable weight borne by the Pharaoh's servants. To serve was to live in the eye of a relentless storm where every moment demanded vigilance. Every action might be your last, and the only certainty was uncertainty. If you thought the palace was merely a place of gold and grandeur, now you see it as a living labyrinth of danger, desire, and deadly secrets. What will the dawn bring? Favor, retribution, or a shadow darker than the night itself? The palace, under the weight of its gilded grandeur, holds its breath as tensions near a dangerous boiling point. The festival fires have dimmed, but the shadows they cast only grow longer. Behind locked doors and veiled curtains, the fragile alliances among the Pharaoh's servants begin to crack, revealing fractures that threaten to shatter more than just fragile social bonds. In this world, betrayal is no abstract concept. It is the sharp blade that severs careers, friendships, and lives. The palace is rife with whispered accusations of conspiracies and treason. A single false step or misunderstood word can plunge a servant from favor into the pit of despair. Those who once claimed loyalty now eye each other with suspicion, calculating who will be the next to fall. Mary, the trusted keeper of the Pharaoh's sacred seal, finds herself at the center of murmurings. Her intercepted message, once a beacon of caution, has become a source of paranoia. A faction within the court accuses her of conspiring with Kamos, the mysterious new attendant who seems to pull strings from the shadows. Rumors spread like wildfire, letters forged, loyalties bought with gold, and dark dealings beyond the Pharaoh's knowledge. Mary's allies dwindle as fear boils over. Nightly patrols under torchlight grow longer and stricter. Servants walk with eyes downcast, voices hushed, lest they be overheard plotting the downfall of a colleague or overhearing their own doom whispered behind chained doors. The infamous House of Silence, that subterranean prison of whispers and shadows, looms in every fearful mind. One night, a desperate coup attempt, or what some say was a tragic misunderstanding, comes to a head. A group of servants, fueled by whispered promises of change and reward, plot to intercept a royal decree that would disband several key palace positions. Komos, accused of spearheading this clandestine maneuver, disappears just as guards raid. A hidden chamber stuffed with stolen scrolls covered in his cipher. The fallout is swift and unforgiving. Those even loosely connected to Komos's network are rounded up. Torture and interrogation follow, designed not merely to punish, but to extract confidences and destroy any nascent opposition. Some perish in secret, while others are condemned to exile, their names erased from official records, as if they had never served the Pharaoh at all. The Pharaoh himself remains inscrutable, his gaze cold and unreadable as he presides over the court where lives hang on his word. His trusted viziers urge swift justice, while priests mumble prayers against the returning forces of chaos, fearing divine wrath if disorder is allowed to fester within the sacred walls. The air is thick with the scent of incense and blood outside. The palace, the city trembles. The rumor of unrest spreads through marketplaces, porters, floors, and the winding alleys of Con el. The once hidden fractures among the elite servants ripple outward, unsettling the complex web that holds the kingdom together. Soldiers are dispatched to patrol city gates. Spies are doubled. The temperature of power shifts dangerously among the common people. Whispers carry tales of secret trials and deaths that have no formal record. Servants who vanished overnight. Prisoners whose screams have long been silenced. And a web of deceit as intricate as the palace's painted ceilings. Some speak of curses laid upon those who betrayed the Pharaoh. Tales passed like warnings around flickering fires. Amidst this turmoil, Mary makes a desperate choice. Knowing that survival depends on shifting alliances, she approaches a former rival, a eunuch, who controls access to the Pharaoh's chambers. Their alliance is uneasy, shadowed by years of mistrust, but cemented by shared necessity. Together, they weave a plan not just to expose Komos, but to wrest control of the palace's secrets before they are lost forever. But nothing in this perilous game is certain, as the eunuch shares a forbidden scroll revealing the web of Komos's influence. The palace is rocked by a sudden explosion of accusation. A trusted chamberlain, long thought loyal, is arrested for plotting to assassinate a high priest sympathetic to the conspirators. The implications reverberate, even those closest to the Pharaoh may be complicit in the unraveling order. The culmination approaches during a secret gathering, disguised as a routine festival banquet. Servants from all ranks assemble under banners that flutter against the deepening dusk. The air hums with tension, eyes darting like hungry birds, hands hovering near concealed weapons. The night is a powder keg. One spark will light the kingdom aflame with suspicion and violence, as the Pharaoh's voice rings out, calling for universal loyalty and divine order. A sharp cry cleaves the air. A servant collapses, poisoned, the chalice she held shattered. On the floor, panic erupts. Accusations fly like arrows in battle. The fragile confidence of the court shatters like glass, exposing every secret and fear. The palace doors slam shut. Torches are lit along the inner corridors. Men and women key their voices into whispers and threats. As guards drag the accused away, Eyes meet across the room, the unspoken question lingering. Who will be next? And what price will they pay in this deadly game of favors, fears, and fatal mistakes? If you believed the life of a servant was a precarious dance before, you are now witnessing its breaking point. The stakes have never been higher, and the line between survival and destruction has never been thinner. The dawn stretches slowly over the Nile, staining the palace walls with soft gold. But within these grandeur stones and sacred halls, the air remains thick with tension and unanswered questions. The festival's chaos has left scars, some visible, others burning beneath the surface. The Pharaoh's servants awaken to a world reshaped by secrets uncovered, alliances shattered, and lives forever altered. Among the scattered courtiers and weary scribes, the absence of key figures is a silent testament to power's ruthless calculus. Neferimpa, the royal cupbearer, remains missing, swallowed by the shadows that claim those who fall from favor. Kamos, the enigma whose whispered manipulations sparked mistrust, has vanished into rumor or exile. And Mary, caught in the fierce crossfires of accusation and loyalty, now walks a path as precarious as any dagger's edge. The palace feels like a living entity, its heartbeat measured by whispered conversations, furtive glances, and the ever-watchful eyes of guards. Those summoned to the Pharaoh's private chambers can expect fate to be meted out not by law, but by divine will interpreted through mortal fear. A word from the throne could mean pardon or death, reward or ruin. The chamberlain accused of plotting against the high priest is bound and brought before the Pharaoh. His eyes, once bright with confidence, now flicker with despair. Charges of treason and sacrilege hang thick in the air. The courtroom, drenched in incense and intimidation, is no place for mercy. Witnesses, many coerced or bought, tell tales of secret meetings, forbidden letters, and conspiratorial oaths whispered beneath the moonlight. The chamberlain protests, but the Pharaoh's decision is swift and final. Outside the grand hall, servants hold their breath, knowing any moment could be their last. The delicate balance of power has tipped, the web of trust has unraveled, and the palace stands on the brink of deeper unrest. Even the earth itself seems to hold its breath beneath the gleaming pyramids that rise eternal nearby. Yet beneath the fear and suspicion, threads of resistance and hope stir. Mary, battered but unbroken, gathers her remaining allies. She understands that survival depends on knowledge and alliances, on subtle moves in the palace's ever-shifting dance. Conversations are held in hushed tones behind locked doors. Secrets exchanged not for power alone, but for something more. Elusive freedom from the madness that grips the court. Meanwhile, the ranks of lower servants, those whose faces go unnoticed by history, carry on. Water bearers, kitchen hands, animal tenders, each plays a silent, indispensable role in the palace's lifeblood. Their stories are the quiet pulse beneath royal drama, a hum of resilience in the face of danger and despair. Outside the palace walls, the city awakens to whispers of the previous night's events. Rumors swirl through the crowded markets and narrow alleyways, the fate of favorites, the vengeance of rivals, the mysterious disappearances. The Nile flows on, indifferent to human schemes, but witness to every secret, every betrayal. The river has been the lifeblood of Egypt for millennia, and for those who serve the Pharaoh, it is also a silent sentinel to their fleeting lives. History has recorded the names of kings and queens, battles fought and alliances forged, but the servants, the unseen hands that kept the wheels turning, remain shadows behind the spotlight. Their sacrifices, fears, and quiet acts of courage shaped the palace as much as the pharaoh's will. As the sun climbs higher, prayers rise in the temples. The priests speak of order restored, of divine justice enacted. They recount tales of loyalty rewarded and treason punished, weaving the narrative of a kingdom maintained through blood, faith, and iron will. But the stories behind closed doors remain complex, a mixture of fear, ambition, love, and survival. The life of a pharaoh's servant was a crucible. They lived where power and peril entwined inseparably, where privilege was measured by proximity to divinity, and danger lurked in every shadow. Their fates depended on reading silences, deciphering gestures, and mastering the precarious art of obedience and influence for those willing to serve. The palace offered wealth, protection, and status, but never safety. Every reward came at a price heavier than the desert sun, every favor balanced on the brink of disaster. The gods watched, the pharaoh judged, and the servants played their parts in a ceaseless drama written by destiny and desire. And so, as twilight falls once more on the palace by the Nile, the servants gather in hidden courtyards and guarded chambers. Their stories, though largely unwritten, echo through history's heart, a testament to human resilience amid divine power. You have walked among them, seen what lies beyond gold and glory, and understood why you would regret becoming a pharaoh's servant, because here, loyalty is a lifetime wager. Power promises nothing but peril, and beneath the sacred halls, the shadows never truly disappear. Thank you for joining this journey into the secret, perilous world of the pharaoh's servants. If you want a comprehensive summary, additional context on ancient Egyptian court life, or explorations of related topics like the role of eunuchs, royal rituals, or ancient palace intrigue, feel free to ask.